Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Test Don't Guess Tuesday. I'm your hostess, Melissa Hawklapacki, a functional gut health expert. I help women around the country go from constipation to liberation by understanding the root causes of their constipation, right? Because usually you'll go to the doctor and they'll say, we don't know why you're constipated. Just take this pill or take this substance or eat some more fiber or drink some more water. And single-handedly, those solutions never work. It's often because there's gut dysbiosis, and a lot of my clients will choose to run a good at-home stool test, which you can order for yourself at digestivediscovery.com. A lot of them will run that test and then come to me and ask for advice when forming a protocol or reading results. And so that's what I do here each week. I break it down. We'll take a look at a client's test results. It'll be anonymous, so you'll never know who that client is. And we'll talk about some of their symptoms, like a case study. I'll talk about their symptoms, I'll talk about their GI map test results, and then I'll tell you what we did to get them on their way to healing. So we're going to start today with a client of mine who is a 52-year-old woman, very active, very athletic, drinks a ton of water, feels like her diet is good, does a lot of eating out. In fact, when we had gotten into the diet discussion on our call, she really wasn't aware of how little fiber she was actually getting. And the fact that eating something like 1 apple a day with just a few grams of fiber, if that's your only source of fiber, you're not going to be pooping regularly. Remember that you need the fiber in your diet to create the bolus that will move through the intestines, right? Stimulating that movement along the way because there's that bolus going through. But if you've got no fiber and your poop has no bulk to it, it's very hard to stimulate a bowel movement. A lot of people also are given the advice to increase fiber when they are not moving their bowels every day, and that is the wrong way to go about it. Simply raising your fiber level without other changes, if you tend to be bloated and constipated, will 9 times out of 10 just make that worse. So that advice is actually pretty terrible advice for most people, 90% of us. Remember that I suffered myself with constipation as a result of Lyme disease and co-infections and being on a ton of antibiotics that really just immobilized my gut. And I always say being constipated chronically was almost as bad as having Lyme disease because my life was so altered by it. What I could do, I wasn't able to do the outdoor things that I loved because I couldn't find a toilet, right? So anyway, if you haven't heard my story, there's lots of me talking on podcasts about what I went through to get to where I am now, which is helping people every day get unconstipated. It's the work that I do. It's my passion. And I'm so glad you're here to learn. So without further ado, let's get into her GI map test and we'll take a look at what we found. Okay, so let's talk about her GI map and what we found and what we did. So the first page of the GI map, if you remember, is always just pathogens. And these are the pathogens that tend to cause problems like diarrhea, traveler's diarrhea, those kind of feelings that you get when you're traveling and you've eaten something off. Doesn't always have to be traveling, right? Sometimes you'll go out to dinner and you'll wake up in the middle of the night with a really upset stomach. A lot of times it's because these pathogens are present. If you're not familiar with reading the GI map, let's go over it really quickly. You'll see on the left-hand side in the column called bacterial pathogens, those are the names of the bacteria that can be present causing problems in your system. The middle column is your personal result. You will see here this entire column has the signifier DL, which means that there is no detectable limit under the detectable limit of, for instance, Campylobacter, the first bacterial pathogen. And then you'll see in the far column, the reference range. And this is really nice because not only is it telling you if it's there or not, but it's giving you a reference range to say, if that result is a low number and not above the reference range, it lets us know that bacteria is there, though not likely causing problems at this point. I hope that makes sense. You'll see more as we move on. But in this test, you'll see that her particular results were negative on this page. And I would expect them to be negative because she doesn't have any symptoms of gastroenteritis or diarrhea, things like that. The next page here talks about H. pylori. And H. pylori, if you're not familiar, is a bacteria that infects the lining of the stomach. Once it's there, it burrows into the stomach lining, and it can be anywhere, right? So if your stomach has this whole circumference, remember, it can live anywhere in the lining, which is one of the reasons why, if you've had an endoscopy, right, where they stick the tube down your throat and look around and see what's going on, and they have said to you, you do not have H. pylori. However, number one, maybe they didn't even take a sample, which they need to take a sample to let you know it's not there, right? That's a biopsy. That's why it's done. Just looking around doesn't get the job done. But number two, if in that circumference of the stomach, they are taking a little sample over here and they have missed this patch over here, and this is where your H. pylori is hanging out, you're going to have a negative test. It's one of the reasons that I love the GI map, because it is an EPCR test that is looking for fragments, DNA fragments of these bacteria. It's undeniable if it's there or not. So here for this client, you'll see her results 3.12 e to the 2 and is under the reference range of 1 e to the 3. So, because she does have some constipation and some signals, not so much stomach pain, right? But when we see constipation, we always want to think above the intestines. We think about the stomach, and we even can think all the way up to the mouth and how digestion starts there. But in this case, because of the constipation, we know that there is a stomach issue, because whether that H. pylori is raging or not, its job is to keep the stomach acid low so that it can survive. Without stomach acid, adequate stomach acid, you are going to be processing food in your intestines, and it's going to slow down your bowel motility. So here is something that I would pay attention to on this test. Keep it in the back of my mind as I rolled forward. And as we roll forward, we see this next section of commensal and keystone bacteria. You'll notice it's pretty decent. She does a pretty decent job, though overall, you'll see the numbers are a little bit low. And I would like to see some boostering of the good bacteria. Remember, when the bad bacteria are present, which we'll see on the next slide, the good bacteria are fighting against them. And so we want these good guys really robust so they can keep the bad guys in check. You'll see here Enterococcus is slightly high. Also, when we don't have enough stomach acid, it's not uncommon for these numbers to get a little higher. Again, a good probiotic with the strains that she needs will help with this. This is page 3. It talks about opportunistic and overgrowth microbes. And you'll see here there is some overgrowth, at which we expect when stomach acid isn't doing what it needs to do, right? Because the stomach acid is killing all these bacteria as they make their way through your stomach. Not killed by stomach acid, they make their way into the intestines. Things are fermenting and taking time. As your motility has slowed down, these numbers will rise and grow. You'll see Bacillus and Enterococcus faecium here are both high, significantly high, and both of those can be brought down with a general antibacterial herbal blend. We'll talk about that in a minute. Commensal overgrowth microbes. These markers, remember, this test is not a test for SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. However, when I see these numbers creeping higher, I ask my clients if they're suffering with bloating. And in fact, she was. So I would keep that also in the back of my mind. Inflammatory and autoimmune related bacteria. Again, none of these are high enough to be causing autoimmune diseases right now. However, left to grow, they will cause problems down the line. So when I see numbers here rising higher, especially in the next section, commensal, inflammatory, and autoimmune related bacteria, here where my mouse is, those numbers also creeping higher. Nobody wants these numbers high. So I need to come up with a protocol that will take down these numbers here, bat down these numbers here, increase the number of good bacteria here, Also considering what's happening with H. pylori. And then the last section of this test, and you'll see here that everything else was normal, Candida, Rotorola, CMV, Epstein-Barr, that was all normal. And then the next thing I want to be paying attention to is not parasites. Remember, this test, while it's an amazing test, does not always pick up parasites. All of my clients pass parasites. Very rarely picked up on this test, but this intestinal health markers is one of my favorite sections of this test. What it's telling us is how she's digesting, what's happening in the GI system, how is the immune system handling what's happening in the gut, and what's her level of inflammation. So you'll see here her digestion seems pretty okay, right? Even though she also is taking, per her doctor, omeprazole, which does lower, I found out later in the conversation that we had together, that she was taking omeprazole for years. That lowers your stomach acid. That is why we see so much overgrowth. She was talking with me about wanting to get off that medication, has a doctor's appointment coming up, and she will be discussing with them. I think she's getting another scope, whether or not she'll be able to get off that medication. And then we can work on getting rid of the H. pylori and raising her stomach acid naturally, which will take care of future problems, again, while we are eradicating these bad guys. The last section here of her test talking about immune response, you'll see that her secretory IgA is in the toilet. 244 is a really low number. Your immune system starts in your gut. She is getting chronic colds and flus this season. It's not surprising. We need to do some work boosting her immune response. Anti-gliadin IgA, not sensitive to gluten, and calprotectin numbers are rising, showing me inflammation is happening in the gut. So again, for a protocol, I'm thinking about getting rid of the H. pylori. I'm thinking about subsequently raising stomach acid if she's getting off the PPI drug that's lowering that stomach acid. I want to clean up these overgrowth bacteria with a general antibacterial herbal blend, and I want to give her some really good probiotics to raise the numbers of the bacteria, the good bacteria that are missing in her gut. So that is it. I'm really excited to work with this woman because I know she will be feeling a lot better once we make a couple of these changes. We also talked a lot about diet. She's very aware that her diet does need some massive overhauling. She eats on the run. She eats out 5 nights a week. And so we really need to talk about making better changes and choices together. And that's what I do. So if you would love to order this test for yourself, you see how much information is there. Digestivediscovery.com is where you do it. Once you're inside that portal, there's all kinds of education. I actually created an AI bot to help you break down this test. You can say, my bacteroidetes level is low and I have H. pylori. What should I be thinking about? And then if you want personal help, it's easy to schedule a call with me from that portal. So I hope you check it out at digestivediscovery.com. I hope you get your gut health on track because, as Hippocrates said, all health begins in the gut. I'm Melissa Hall-Klepacki. It's been a pleasure. Stick around next week. I'll be back on Tuesday for Test Don't Guess Tuesday.